Francis Ritchie, kia ora, good morning. Thanks for joining us today.
Kia ora. The irony of that statement is the article that I had published with stuff across papers like the Post and the Waikato Times yesterday, where
Yeah.
I was lamenting it being compared to things like the Kardashians, and
Ah,
even
yes.
I saw one that was comparing it to Sex and the City.
What?
Yeah, like it's and the whole memification of it. I saw a spoof that was playing out the Cardinals like some NFL draft pick.
Wow.
It's quite phenomenal where it's gone.
Well, sorry for the introduction. That was accidental. Although there is an aspect of reality TV here, particularly with modern communication, all eyes on Rome. But I'm loving the fact that hey, this isn't something. The results aren't going to be televised or even tweeted. It's all done through smoke signals. This grand old tradition in this beautiful place in the heart of the Vatican. There's so much tradition and legacy in this process as well.
Yeah, and I like seeing the tradition play out because of course because the whole world has an ability to see to a degree what's going on. Having some of that protected, I think, is extremely healthy,
Yeah.
especially since the world brings its way of assessing these things to the party. In the piece that I had published yesterday, I was lamenting the fact that it's made out to be primarily a political thing. Now, there are politics involved. We
Yeah.
can't get away from that. But we assess, when you take God out of the equation, we assess these things through like left right politics. What are the factions? Who are the groups who are fighting against each other? Rather than recognizing that there's a deeply spiritual element to this as well. And that hopefully the Cardinals, even with their differences, are about bringing those differences together at the table, discussing these things with one another to work out who's going to be the best possible pick to be the shepherd of 1.4 billion Catholics in an age where the world sees everything that the Pope says and does.
And now, perhaps part of the problem is the media don't have a frame of reference for this. They're scrambling to find something that they can relate to, and so finding metaphors in reality TV shows or trading players in the NFL. However, this is a deeply spiritual process. There is a lot of prayer, not just happening in Sistine Chapel, but around the world on this one. This is a group of individuals who are so surrounded, so bathed in prayer at the moment.
Yeah, it is. It's hugely spiritual. For Catholics, there are masses that take place around the world. There are people fasting and praying about this. And even outside of Catholicism, for those of us who recognize that when the Pope speaks, the rest of the world kind of hears that as Christian. We recognize this as a hugely important appointment. So even someone like myself from outside of the Catholic Church is praying about this for what my voice is worth in amongst over a billion people
Yeah.
around the world. And my hope is that someone gets appointed who can balance so many things that need to get balanced. When I think about the spiritual nature of it, when I think about the political nature of it, the diplomacy that's involved, the chance that the Pope has to speak into some of the world's biggest issues. Yeah, this needs to be spiritual. Now, I've watched a number of good Catholic theologians talk about this and note that the Holy Spirit doesn't directly appoint the Pope.
Yeah.
That it's human beings that appoint the Pope, but we want those human beings to be steeped in listening to the wisdom of the Spirit as they go about it. Which is why things like even the oaths that they take as they go into it are really significant. Taking an oath that the person that they believe that they're voting for is the person that God wants.
And that is so important as well. And the people who are voting, this is not like an even-handed democracy. In order to be able to vote in the conclave, of course, you need to be a cardinal. You need to be somebody who has been tested, I suppose, spiritually, to be a person of integrity, a person who is close to God. And something which is particular to this conclave, a lot of the people in the room were personally appointed to be cardinals by the late Pope Francis.
Yeah, something like 80% of the people who are voting were appointed by Francis. Now, I think the tendency has been to think that they therefore all theologically think the same as Francis,
Yeah.
but they don't. They're a very diverse group. He appointed some people who think very different from him theologically. What he was most interested in, from what I can tell based on the people that he appointed, was geographical spread. So
Yep.
giving the likes of Asia, giving Africa, giving India, those kind of blocks, Latin America, bigger voices than they've had. And you can see the world reflecting that, wanting to see something like an African pope, for instance, and we could possibly,
Yep.
who knows how it's going to play out, but we could possibly see the appointment of someone who doesn't come from Europe.
Now, of course, this diversity, very much a reflection of Pope Francis, of course, the first non-European pope forever, the first Jesuit pope, and so many firsts in that regard, reflecting the diversity of the Catholic Church today. Most Catholics don't live in Europe. In fact, most of them living in South America, in Asia, in Africa, in terms of representing the Catholic Church. Perhaps to have the next pope as a European, to go back to that old millennia-old tradition, would be a step backwards, some people would say.
Yeah, some people I think would think that, but again, the appointment of who's going to lead is very much about who's the best shepherd,
Yeah.
and the best shepherd might turn out to be European. And there is a tension for the church here. I saw one of the discussions was around, do you appoint where the greatest growth is? And the biggest growth currently happening in the Catholic Church, I think, is in Africa.
Yep.
Or do you appoint a European because the West is where the Catholic Church is contracting? It's where it's seeing its biggest losses.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to speak into that, do you appoint a European pope? So all those things are just part of the tension being held in play as they make their decision.
Of course, the division, or the diversity, I should say, isn't just around geographical or even ethnic areas. There is different, I hesitate to use the word factions, but it's probably the best descriptor, different groups with conservative or perhaps more liberal theology. This is part of the decision-making process and will have a significant influence on the direction of the Catholic Church in the years to come.
Yeah, for those not familiar with the Catholic Church, if you go back to the 1960s, there was a council convened known as Vatican II, and it made some big changes in the nature of the Catholic Church. And then there were some reforms that happened after that some people think didn't reflect the desire of Vatican II. And so now you've got this tension between what is commonly known as traditionalists, and then those who have embraced the changes in the liturgy and various other theological reforms. The tension in the Catholic Church can be felt around that. So again, one of the things that they're trying to hold in play, amongst the many others, is how much you swing in one direction or the other,
Yep.
or how much do you go for someone who can reconcile those groups together.
And getting to the point on this one in terms of, well, not necessarily your pick. This isn't a sweepstake. This is not how this one works. But in terms of what you've read and what you've been praying into, is there a particular cardinal, a particular candidate who you think shines above the others in terms of what the church needs going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know all the cardinals, and there's a common saying that if you go in a pope, you come out a cardinal. So those whose names get put on the table might very well not be the case, and you end up with someone who's unknown.
Yeah.
But I have a soft spot for an Italian who's been serving in the Holy Land for the last 35 years, I think, Pier Battista Pizzaballa, which is great if you say with an Italian accent. But he seems to be able to hold together the traditionalists and the reformers. He seems to have a good focus on peace, and that understanding of peace has been forged in the Holy Land over
Wow.
35 years. So
Yeah.
balancing together some very real tensions. You have the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, you have the tensions between Eastern Orthodox and Catholic, you have the Muslim community in the mix. So I'd be very interested to see what he would be like as Pope. I know his mother doesn't want him to be Pope. I saw that headline.
I don't think she gets
but
a
I
vote
wouldn't be
on this
sad
one.
if he became the Pope.
Yeah, I don't think she gets a vote on this one, but I'm sure she will be praying in in that regard. And hey, somebody who can bring unity both within the Catholic Church and more broadly across Christendom certainly would be a positive step forward here. Of course, you don't get a vote either, Frank, but I know you're praying into it. We're waiting for the smoke on the horizon, but hey, this may happen over the weekend. We may still be talking about this next week, right?
Yeah. I think voting doesn't start again. The next ballot takes place at 8:30 tonight, so we've got to wait impatiently, or I'm impatient about it while they sleep. But ultimately, and I think if I was going to close off with anything, I think it would reflect the words that I've heard from some cardinals, where ultimately what we want is someone who declares Jesus, who declares the empty tomb, who declares the risen Christ, and shows the hope of that to the world.
Frank, appreciate your wisdom and insight. As always, thanks for joining us.
A pleasure.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.